Speed and Nguyen's Deep Dive podcast is an official podcast made by Speed and Nguyen with the voice made from Google's Notebook LM. Do not reproduce our podcast without permissions from the owner. Welcome to the Speed and Nguyen's Deep Dive podcast. Today, we are diving deep into maybe the most unlikely hero in the whole DC canon, Christopher Smith. You know him as Peacemaker.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was basically a footnote until the Suicide Squad. And then suddenly, boom, this massive hit show. Hilarious, heartbreaking, just wild.
Totally wild. And what's really nuts is how this streaming series, maybe more than any blockbuster film, ended up being the narrative hinge connecting the old DCEU to James Gunn's new DCU.
It's like the ultimate superhero logistics tightrope walk, isn't it? In Peacemaker, this one character is somehow the anchor for all of it.
Right. So our mission today is pretty clear. We got to give you the essential season 1 recap, really zeroing in on Chris Smith's, devastating emotional journey, the trauma that made him who he is.
And then after that, we need to break down the really radical shifts, the multiversal stuff that season 2 throws in, how it fundamentally reshapes the whole DC timeline for you.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So season 1 kicks off right after the Suicide Squad. Chris Smith, having just killed Rick Flag Jr. for the sake of peace.
Yeah.
Well, he's barely recovered when Amanda Waller basically blackmails him into Project Butterfly.
Ah, yes, Project Butterfly. Talk about a mess. It was this, political black ops nightmare built on lies, basically.
Exactly.
The team itself was this chaotic mix of arduous people, Harcourt, Economos, Myrn, who was secretly something else. But the real danger was internal, wasn't it?
Absolutely. A huge part of the tension was Leota Adebayo, Waller's daughter, planted there specifically to spy on Chris. I mean, when you look back, pretty much every relationship Chris built that season, Adebayo, Myrn, even Vigilante, was kind of built on some kind of lie meant to control him.
Oh.
And that level of, systemic deceit, that's what pushes him to eventually just reject authority altogether.
So the mission itself was, on the surface, simple. Stop these insect aliens, the butterflies, who were possessing people in power. But then came the twist, and it wasn't just that they were invaders.
No, exactly. That was the masterstroke. The twist was why they were here. They weren't just like mindless bugs. They were refugees from a dying planet.
Refugees.
Yeah. Their leader, the Golf Butterfly, laid out this really powerful, maybe kind of chilling philosophy. They were trying to save Earth from us, from humanity destroying itself, and their plan was, control.
Which puts Peacemaker's whole motto, peace at any cost, right on trial. Goff is basically asking him, isn't control just another kind of peace, maybe a necessary one, if humans are going to wreck everything anyway?
It's a huge moral dilemma for him. Does he accept Goff's offer, achieve peace by basically stripping away free will? Or does he reject the alien control, stick with messy, violent human independence?
And that choice comes down to the finale, right? It's cow or never, the big showdown to destroy the butterfly's food source, this giant alien space worm / cow thing.
Which is just perfect Peacemaker, isn't it? This low-tech, slightly absurd solution involving a helmet and an alien cow.
Totally. He rejects Goff's whole philosophical argument, chooses violence instead.
Yeah.
Straps Adebayo to that rocket helmet, launches her right into the cow's chest. Boom. Kills it.
Mission accomplished, yeah. But the cost was huge. Harcourt and Vigilante were both seriously messed up, hospitalized.
And you can't forget that amazing, comedic ending bit. The Justice League finally shows up.
Way too late.
Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash finally arrive, only for Chris, bleeding and victorious, to just mock them.
And that moment, that specific cameo became so important later, as we'll get into. It was the key point for the whole transition.
But beyond the alien fights and the jokes, the real core of season 1 was Chris facing his past, right? Specifically his father, Auggie Smith, the White Dragon.
Yeah, the show really dives deep into the root of his trauma. Auggie was just horrifically abusive, forced Chris and his older brother Keith into these brutal sparring matches.
And Chris accidentally killed Keith in one of them.
Right. And instead of any comfort, Auggie just weaponized that guilt against Chris for his entire life. It's heartbreaking stuff.
So Chris finally kills Auggie, gets rid of the physical threat. But the show does this brilliant thing. The trauma doesn't just disappear.
Not at all. Auggie's ghost immediately shows up, sits right there on the trailer with Chris, haunting him. It proves Chris can't find peace just by killing the external bad guys.
Yes.
His biggest fight is internal.
It's such a powerful way to show it. Even with aliens and conspiracies, he's still stuck battling the memory of this domestic monster.
And that inner peace gets even more complicated because of the final betrayal.
Yeah.
Adebayo. She plants that fake diary Waller gave her to frame Chris.
But then she has a change of heart, a big one.
She does. She goes public, exposes Waller, Project Butterfly, everything. It's a critical move because it just shatters the status quo. Waller's disgraced. The whole covert ops world is in chaos.
And that chaos, that power vacuum, is basically the perfect opening for Season 2 to come in and rework the whole DCU.
Exactly. Which brings us right to James Gunn's, let's call it cinematic surgery. Season 2 doesn't just continue the story, it fundamentally restructures the universe around Chris. It pulls Peacemaker right into the new DCU canon.
And the big switch happens right away. In the Season 2 premiere, the Ties That Grind, they do the whole previously on recap of the Season 1 finale. And this is where it gets really interesting.
That Justice League cameo we mentioned, it's changed. Gone. The DCEU versions, Cavill's Superman, Gadot's Wonder Woman, Momoa's Aquaman, Miller's Flash, they're digitally swapped out in that recap.
Replaced by
the new DCU's Justice Gang. So now you see David Corenswit's Superman, Millie Alcock's Supergirl, Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner, Edie Gategi's Mr. Terrific, and Isabella Merced's Hawkgirl.
Whoa! That's a major retcon, just right there in the recap.
It is, and Gunn called Season 1 mostly canon, which is key. The thinking seems to be, it's not that Chris imagined it or anything. The events of Project Butterfly, the cow, his personal history, that all still happened. But the context, the bigger superhero world, the specific Justice League he met, that got overwritten. It establishes the new timeline around him. So they weren't just late in Season 1. They were the wrong versions, the now deleted versions of those heroes.
Gotcha. So Chris carries all the baggage from Season 1, but the world around him has fundamentally shifted, which must mess with his head even more.
You'd think so. And speaking of shifts, let's talk about Harcourt. Her storyline in Season 2 gets incredibly meta. It actually addresses some fan feedback from the first season.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, some viewers felt her character in Season 1, the super tough, aloof, aggressive agent, sometimes felt like a toxic dude bro trope, just, in a female character. The badass girl boss thing that felt a bit hollow.
Okay, I remember some of that talk online.
Right. So Season 2 doesn't just ignore that. It confronts it directly. There's a scene where a psychiatrist basically calls Harcourt out, saying she exhibits patterns of toxic masculinity.
Wow. How does she react?
Badly. Pure denial, aggression. It leads her to deliberately pick a fight in a bar, like seeking out violence, and she gets absolutely pummeled. It's really self-destructive.
So the show is kind of acknowledging the critique.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
It's like the show's saying that old definition of badass based on just repression and violence, that doesn't fly anymore, not in this new DCU. Her arc becomes about breaking down that persona and actually growing, moving beyond just being the cool, violent operator.
Interesting. Meanwhile, Chris's dad, Auggie, even though he's dead, he's still causing trouble. Through his super creepy man cave, the quantum unfolding chamber.
The QUC, yeah. Turns out that thing is way more than just a weird room full of racist junk. It's an interdimensional travel device.
Seriously, Auggie built that.
Apparently, Auggie Smith, the White Dragon, built a working machine that can punch holes between realities, which suddenly introduces this huge new threat for the DCU dimensional instability, all thanks to a villain whose main things were white supremacy and abusing his family.
That's a lot. And Chris uses it.
He stumbles through it, yeah. Ends up in an alternate reality. People are calling it Earth X. And at first, it seems like a dream come true for him.
Oh, so.
On this Earth, his dad is a hero, the Blue Dragon. His brother Keith is alive. The family's rich, famous, celebrated. They're the top trio. It looks like everything Chris ever wanted.
Okay, but there's got to be a catch, right? This sounds too good to be true.
Oh, there's a huge catch. The vibe is deeply sinister. The hints strongly suggest this utopia is actually a nightmare world where basically discriminatory authoritarian regimes might have won.
Nazis.
The clues point that way. Something about Nazis are the heroes. The fact that the Blue Dragon and the top trio are heroes because they defeated something called the Rainbow Creature, it heavily implies this world is built on prejudice, maybe a kind of inverted morality. Chris might be happier, but the world itself is fundamentally wrong.
Jeez. So his escape is just another kind of prison.
Pretty much. And all this dimensional chaos from the QUC, it shakes things up back in the main DCU too, especially in that power vacuum left by Waller's downfall.
Right, because new players step in.
Exactly. We see new agencies rising. Rick Flag Sr., that's the estranged, really vengeful father of Rick Flag Jr., the guy Chris killed back in the Suicide Squad, he takes over RGUS.
Oh boy, so he's got a serious grudge against Peacemaker.
A massive one.
Yeah.
And he's using RGUS's resources specifically to hunt Chris down, get revenge.
But there's a counter move, right?
Yes. Adebayo and her allies, they form Checkmate, which, if you follow the comics, is a big deal. Checkmate is usually this counterintelligence group meant to monitor metahumans, sometimes working with RGUS, sometimes against them.
So we've got these two rival spy agencies now. One run by Flag Sr., who hates Chris, and the other run by Adebayo, who's basically his best friend.
Yeah.
All focus on Peacemaker.
Yep, it's this incredibly complex political chessboard, and it all leads to this really unsettling Season 2 finale.
What happens?
So after Chris grapples with this alternate reality, his trauma, realizing even the perfect world is a lie, he gets violently kidnapped.
By?
Coordinated by Flag Sr., yeah. But with secret help from Lex Luthor, working behind the scenes.
Luthor.
Flag Sr. gets his revenge. He throws Peacemaker through another portal into this newly found dimension called Salvation.
Salvation? What is that?
It's described as an extra-dimensional prison world, specifically for metahumans. Hostile, isolated, bleak. Flag Sr. literally dumps Chris there to test the environment, abandoning him.
Just leaves him there.
Leaves him totally alone.
Yeah.
The season ends with Chris surrounded by the sounds of,
Yeah.
well, roaring unknown creatures.
Right.
His whole quest for inner peace has just landed him on a prison planet.
Man, that's quite the journey. From super patriot killer in Season 1, confronting all that trauma in Season 2, only to face this universe-level consequence, abandoned.
It really brings this whole arc together, doesn't it? But if we connect that ending, Salvation, to the comics, it gets even bigger.
How so? What's the comic connection?
Well, the name Salvation immediately brings to mind Salvation Run, a DC comic series from 2007-2008. In that story, a bunch of DC villains get exiled to this remote prison planet. And the big twist in the comics, that prison planet was secretly a training ground for the armies of Darkseid, ruler of Apocalypse.
Darkseid. Whoa, okay.
And think about the dimensional tech itself.
Yeah.
Augie's QUC, the quantum unfolding chamber, it makes a really distinct sonic boom sound when it activates.
Right.
What's the portal technology used by Darkseid and the New Gods in the comics? It's called a boom tube. That sonic signature plus the prison name Salvation, it feels very deliberate. It sets a potentially massive scale for this new DCU.
So, wait, you're saying Salvation might not just be a prison, but maybe a training ground for Apocalypse?
It raises a huge question, doesn't it? If Salvation is tied to Apocalypse, does that mean Peacemaker's deeply personal struggle, his inability to escape his father's legacy through the QUC, has accidentally dropped him right into a training ground for cosmic war, pitting him against one of DC's absolute biggest villains?
His fight for inner peace just turned into a potential fight against the New Gods.
Exactly. Gives you a lot to think about until we see what happens next.
See you again in the next episode of this podcast.